evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on EQUINOXE Television. Tonight, the Social Democratic Front Party, the principal opposition political party, marches words with action and boycott the November parliamentary session, which opened today in the nation's capital, Yaoundé. In this newscast, we come back to the several minutes of declarations of the SDF. Also, as the Senate President, Massenyat Ndifendi, and the President of the National Assembly, Kabaege Jibril, opened the third parliamentary session of the year 2017. Today, they denounced killings of gendarme officers in the two Anglophone regions of the country. Plus, we talk about Only Masaga, the political figure of the UPC party that joined the ranks of the Cameroon Renaissance movement of Professor Maurice Canto. He resigned a few hours ago. Those are headlines. Stay with us for the details. Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the news on EQUINOXE Television. Let's begin right away in the nation's capital, Yaoundé, particularly at the SDF MPs and senators that have actually converged at the party center, a regional officer that was in the nation's capital, Yaoundé, for the fourth time since the start of the Anglophone crisis in the two English-speaking regions of the country. Members of parliament meet in an ordinary session, and for the first time, the SDF decided to stay out of the picture. It is the party's strategy to protest against a refusal by the government of Cameroon to listen to the cries of the English-speaking population. The government, according to SDF MPs and senators, has so far been applying a military strategy to a pure political solution, and they have so far said that the slogan of oneness and a united Cameroon has remained a slogan within the ranks of the CPDM party in the country. Those were the declarations of the principal opposition party in the nation's capital, Yaoundé, today, the SDF, that refused or boycotted the opening of the November session of Parliament in the nation's capital, Yaoundé, today. Now, we are going to be having the declaration of the president of the SDF parliamentary group, Honorable Joseph Banazem, was speaking to EQUINOXE Television.
1 year, life in Anglophone Cameroon has been nightmarish, characterized by an undeclared but effective state of emergency, which has resulted in the judicial system, the educational system, economic activities grounded to a halt, law and order at the verge of total collapse, the rampant abuse of human rights, people being chased out of their homes into bushes, the number of Anglophone Cameroonian refugees in neighboring Federal Republic of Nigeria increasing on a daily basis, the unjustified suspension of internet access to these regions, the kidnapping, adoption, and deportation of citizens from these regions to detention centers in Yaoundé, Bafoussam, and Douala to be judged in the French language, a language they barely understand. The unjustified mass killings of innocent, armless citizens, which has of late degenerated into the killing of members of the security forces in very murky circumstances. This is unacceptable. The population is crying for a way out of this impasse, and voices have called for a meaningful and inclusive dialogue to find long-lasting solutions to the problems. The government is applying a military solution to a purely political problem whose existence is now universally acknowledged. In its recklessness, the government has encouraged its functionaries and elite to refer to Anglophone Cameroonians as terrorists to be killed, dogs to be caged in, and rats to be exterminated. The public media has been transformed into a radio mill Collins as of yesteryears. Any attempt on demonstration in solidarity with the Anglophones in the country has been repressed, whereas the CPDM can organize demonstrations, marches, and demonstrations in support of government and the CPDM positions at will. Members of the SDF parliamentary groups are dismayed that instead of listening to the cries of the people, the CPDM government embarked on a meaningless exercise of sending members of its Central Committee, accompanied by its elite, to go to Anglophone Cameroon to wine and dine with its militants and concord on return to Yaoundé a report to its national chairman, who doubles as President of the Republic, that reiterates their now famous slogan of oneness and indivisibility of Cameroon as a decentralized unity state. This is what they know that their national chairman wants to hear. The SDF, on its part, has always stood for a federal form of government, as outlined during the rallies of its parliamentarians in Bamenda and Boya on the 28th of November and the 5th of December 2016, respectively, at the onset of the crisis. It is worth noting that for over 20 years, this country has been moved from centralized unity than decentralized unity, with strong men and weak institutions, during which period the decentralization has not moved an iota, and that this country has moved from a federal republic to a united republic and to a centralized republic and then to a decentralized unity republic. Why has any discussion on the form of state become suddenly a taboo? In both houses have decided to withhold.
That is the president of the SDF parliamentary group, Honorable Joseph Banazem, that declaration following the boycott of the Social Democratic Front as far as the November session of Parliament is concerned. Now, Cameroon is a country. Let us strive for peace and unity in our country. Those were the words of the House Speaker Kavai Gejibri as he was opening the November session of Parliament in the nation's capital, Yaoundé. He said that only a meaningful dialogue is the way out of the current crisis rocking the two Anglophone regions of the country. He equally denounced violence being perpetrated in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. He laid emphasis on economic challenges of the nation, the second-generation agriculture announced by the President of the Republic of Cameroon at the Bolova Agro-Pastoral Show, food security, and the 2019 AFCON Games to be organized by Cameroon. And should be noted that the senatorial session equally opened this afternoon at exactly 4 p.m. local time. It was an opportunity for the Senate President, Masenya Njifendi, to equally denounce violence in the Tungi-speaking regions of the country. The Senate President equally denounced the killing of gendarme officers in the northwest and southwest regions of the country in the past few days. He also praised government's efforts at resolving the current Anglophone crisis and also the crisis in the far north region of the country in relation to Boko Haram atrocities. We obviously will be coming back to that in our subsequent newscast. On to something else still in relation to the March session of the Parliament. What are the expectations of some Cameroonians here in the country's economic capital, Douala, and across the national territory? Innocent Aze put together the following report.
The city of Douala expressed mixed expectations from members of parliament and senators as the November ordinary session of parliament opens in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé. Redressing the Anglophone crisis, which has threatened the peace, stability, and economic progress of Cameroon since November last year, is the principal expectation of some city dwellers.
Our representative people in the parliament have to do better to try to make peace come back in Cameroon. You are seeing what's happening in our country, in the north part of the country, in the southwest and the northwest. All this problem is affecting seriously our economy. The income that we are expecting from this region, we cannot get. Means that the politics that we are going to implement cannot be done.
Improvements on the well-being of Cameroonians in terms of the provision of social amenities is also expected from the parliamentarians whose capabilities are trusted.
We said this our parliamentarian people to improve our life. We want to feel better than before. And we know that they have means to do that.
This is not the case with other city dwellers who say have no confidence in their representatives. According to this city dweller, the parliamentarians do not do their work. They concentrate on their personal gains and think about the population when they need their support. To this order, the parliamentarians have never played any role for the benefit of Cameroonians. They always have the habit of fighting for their self-interest. We expect nothing from them as usual. A positive thinker, Professor Tavier Frederick, comes back to say trust should be bestowed on the senators and members of parliament.
These are the people that we voted, so if you have confidence in them, if we were not having confidence in them, why should we be voting them?
City dwellers, however, fold their arms, wishing their representatives in parliament. Remember, they voted them with the aim of channeling their problems to hierarchies for solutions to be granted.
Still in relation to the Anglophone crisis, church leaders in the Northwest Regional Headquarters have said that continuous prayers and fasting for a peaceful Cameroon are the solutions to the current crisis rocking the two English-speaking regions of the country. They met in Bamenda in a special service during which they called on all Cameroonians to engage in a spiritual battle for peace to return in the two English-speaking regions of the country in particular and across the country in general. Details in the following report. Politicians, actors of the civil society, some government officials have time and again expressed their utmost desire for the mounting tension in the Anglophone regions of Cameroon to see a positive end. Denominational heads have also joined voices to call for peace through special masses, prayers and fasting. In one of such outings at the Full Gospel Jubilee Center in Bamenda Northwest Region, grouping Christians of the Full Gospel Mission and other Pentecostal churches, the officiating pastor said that it has been months of pain and hardship.
This crisis for more than a year, and it's been very painful for us to have seen all what has happened. We also want to say that this crisis has caused a lot of pain. Lives have been lost, property destroyed, and many other things have gone wrong. We as a church, we could not be comfortable when we see precious life. We see blood shed in a nation. It doesn't speak well of a nation. So we also want to raise our voice and say we denounce the killings, no matter who are the perpetrators.
The president of the Pentecostal Pastors Fellowship said that bestowing all hope in authorities and politicians in a crisis situation like that in the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon is a mistake and called on Christians to unanimously pray for a solution.
In the midst of crisis, we shouldn't lean only on our abilities and political power. We should also look up to God. There is God in heaven, and the Bible says the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men. He has the final say, even in the political affairs of a nation. And we want Cameroonians to turn to God.
The solution to Reverend DEFO Cletus may be the much talked about dialogue, but without the continuous intervention of the church, things would have been more complicated than they are today.
Worst things would have happened if the church had not prayed. This time, as I said, we've come not to start praying, but to continue praying and intensify, because the events of September 22nd and 1st October tells us that we still have a long way to go to pray. And that has triggered us to regroup and to intensify prayer.
We continue with politics. The emblematic and historic figure of the UPC political party, Wungli Masaga, who left the party that was less than 2 months ago and became special advisor of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM, of Professor Maurice Canto, has resigned. He justified his resignation by citing the poor functioning of the party of Professor Maurice Canto. He says that the CRM political party, the national president in particular, did not receive him personally following his appointment as his special advisor. After waiting for a long period of time, the party gave him the sum of 200,000 francs CFA, while it is generally believed that he had received millions of rank CFA within the ranks of the CRM political party of Professor Maurice Canto. Now, he spoke to Equinox Television. It should be noted on that fateful September 19th, 2017, less than 2 months ago, when he decided to become special advisor of Professor Maurice Canto, he said that the CRM political party is the lone opposition party that has been able to meet the aspirations of the founding fathers of the UPC. Take a listen.
Wumli Masaga is now a supporter of the CRM party, laying the rationale behind his decision in party.
The UPC, recognized by the government, is no more the real UPC settled by the founding fathers. Now they are doing the CPDM policy. And I felt that with RMC, we have a new UPC, because they are gathering patriots from all the countries.
That is an excerpt of Wumli Masaga that has decided to quit the CRM political party less than 2 months after he left the UPC for the party of Professor Maurice Canto. We take you now to the far north region of the country to talk about the fight against Boko Haram that is intensifying that part of the country. Local population equally playing their own role as far as the battle against the Islamic sect is concerned. It is a priority to inhabitants of Mogode and Bura. Those are some subdivisions most hit by the Islamic sect. Details with Katrine Kone.
Mogode and Boha are the two subdivisions of Mayosanaga, mostly highly hit by Boko Haram insurgencies. According to these inhabitants, 2 persons were killed recently and dumped by the side of the road. These 2 localities, situated at the frontiers between Cameroon and Nigeria, are highly militarized, aided also by members of the local vigilant groups. The insurgents of Boko Haram have increased the tempo of suicide attack and bloody raid on neighboring Cameroon, this by the deployment of a huge military contingent along the borders. The new SDO from Mayosanaga, Jean Daniel, accompanied by some elite, carried out a contact tour to these localities in order to assess the situation that is prevailing in the 2 subdivisions. Mogode subdivision is a touristic town and the highest producer of Irish potatoes in the far north region, but has been abandoned to itself because of the havoc caused by the Islamic sect Boko Haram. The new SDO of Mayosanaga has also urged on economic operators to relaunch agricultural, economic, commercial activities in the Boha subdivision that shares boundary with Nigeria. He equally urged the population to put an end to barbaric practices in the division.
And that brings us to the end of this first segment of the news. Up next is Talking Points. Stay with us. We shall be right back. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the November session of Parliament for the year 2017, the 30th of its kind since the year began, and the last, of course, which is going to be taking a look at the budget for the year 2018. But something happened today. The boycott of the principal opposition political party in Cameroon, the Social Democratic Front. Joining us tonight is a senior barrister at law, Barrister Ashuagbo Emmanuel. We thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Good evening. Televiewers, good evening, me.
Thank you so much for coming. The SDF party has so far boycotted the November session of Parliament as announced. We were having a series of announcements, but it was not yet confirmed. What do you have to say about that, Barrister?
Well, SDF is true to its promise of standing by the embattled Anglophone population that is clamoring for change, and the government doesn't seem to be listening. So I think they are true to their promise, and I hope the other deputies follow suit, because the path that is being taken by the government doesn't seem to be good.
Remaining true to the population is what many seem to be clapping at the decision. But what happens next? That is the question. What could be the implication of the non-participation of the SDF in this session of Parliament?
It won't have any impact because CPDM has an overwhelming majority. You see, the business will go on as usual because they will have, the CPDM party has a quorum in Parliament that can work without the opposition parties. So it's just a matter of principle.
So how significant can it be, boycotting the session of Parliament?
Well,
positively?
It is significant in that way the people know that SDF has stood up to say no to what is happening.
That is a significant.
They have registered their protests, and everybody knows that they don't agree with the policies that the government is putting forth in this problem.
Do you think that it can be able to push the other MPs, especially the House Speaker Kavai Gejibril, to come up with some concrete solutions as far as the current crisis is concerned?
Well, the solutions don't depend on the Parliament; they depend on the government that has the cake and the yam. And
so the Parliament has no significant
role
to play.
The Parliament that would have had an advisory role seems to be towing party lines, as we saw them on prior to October 1 when they came out and marched in support of the soldiers, support of the government, and I don't think anything can happen to make them change their course.
And now the Social Democratic Front is talking about refusal by the government to listen to the cry of the English-speaking population. But we heard the Senate President this afternoon praising the efforts put in place so far by the government to resolve the crisis rocking the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon. Do you think that what do you have to say about that?
Well, this is very strange of a Senate President, because this very President, prior to 1st of October, called Anglophones terrorists and asked and recommended that soldiers be sent there. And after the bloodbath, the Senate President never addressed a single word of condolence to any family. And now again he is praising the government for taking a move that is similar to the one that was taken prior to October 1. So I think these people they are really on the wrong track.
And talking about the military measures that the government is taking, as was pronounced today by the president of the SDF parliamentary group, to a pure political solution. When he talks about a pure political solution, what does that mean?
Well, it simply means that we are all aware that no army has ever won a war against its own population. And we have all seen that there is no war in the Anglophone region. It's a population that is saying no to injustice, no to a situation that they want to be changed. All the times we've seen people go down the streets, they go down the street with tree leaves in their hands, and they say they sing no violence, no violence. I don't think it is a good thing to send soldiers with live bullets, with weapons of war to go with military helicopters to go face people who are unarmed. I think SDF is very correct. SDF has done what is right and that the government ought to have seen, because this is something political. There are people who want federation. There are others who want independence. There are others who want decentralization. It is a war of opinion. There is no physical fight here. You see, it's a difference in opinion. I don't think somebody who does not have reason like me should be termed a terrorist, because I am for decentralization and another person is for federalism. I would say this man for federalism is a terrorist. Why? That is not democracy. Democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. You have to stand in the interest of the people. When the people say, and you see, come to think of it, the Anglophone population is very, very right. The government, the CPDM government, has been violating the constitution for so many years. The constitution says Cameroon is a unitary, decentralized state. But CPDM has put in place a centralized system that is depriving the Anglophone population of the benefits which they ought to have been getting. So they say, we want to choose our leaders. That is very possible in a decentralized setup that is provided for by the constitution. So I think they are correct. I think SDF is right to ask the government to listen to these calls and grant them, because it is constitutional. It's the constitution that said Cameroon is decentralized. And the people say, we want to choose our leaders. And within that framework, we see that it is possible. So I think SDF is very correct. And the Anglophones,
the expectations
ask
are
the
many
government
from
to apply the
Cameroonians.
constitution.
The expectations are many from Cameroonians across the national territory. This is the fourth time that MPs are meeting as far as since the start of the current crisis, political crisis in the two English-speaking regions of the country. Do you think that the November session of Parliament, this 2017, is going to yield any positive fruit as far as the crisis is concerned?
Well, the November session is not a crisis resolution session. It's for finances, so they are going to examine their projected budget as usual, and I don't think they will.
So the socio-political crisis should be none of their business. Whereas we heard in their opening speeches, of both heads of parliament, that they were talking about the crisis rocking the northwest and the southwest regions.
I want to think that all those statements were made obiter, because they had previously and permanently given their position to say that people who are rebelling on the other side who are clamoring for change on the other side are terrorists, and they should be handled as such. So I don't think they are going to change their position. It is reasonable of parliamentarians to understand that they are parliamentarians for the entire national territory, and if part of the national territory of which they are parliamentarians is in turmoil, it is their duty to see to it that calm and peace reigns. And no parliamentarian should think that calm and peace can reign when you send soldiers, category 3 force, to go face unarmed citizens. We are really appalled. I saw in the newspapers that they seize arms in Southwest. When I look at the arms side, I mean, it's shameful. Dane guns, axes, those are the arms that were seized. Those are weapons that were seized, Dane guns and axes.
Unfortunately, because of time, we will have time some other time to talk about all this. Senior Barrister Ashu Agbo Emmanuel, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time. To our televiewers, it was equally a pleasure having you with us in this edition of the news. Wishing you a blessed day in the company of our programs. Until we meet again, goodbye.